Hey, my name is Dom. I just got my Canadian citizenship, I got my passport, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. But first we'll start with the most exciting part, which is the ceremony. Today I'm in Toronto, and it is the big day to finally go and attend my citizenship ceremony. So, let's go. In April 2024, I finally received my invitation to go and attend my citizenship ceremony. I applied for citizenship in January of 2022, and so the process took me just over 2 years. And just in the nick of time because my PR card was going to expire in a few months. It did take me longer than usual, but more on that later. Unfortunately, you can only bring one guest into the ceremony, but luckily my sister came up from the US to come and support me. Now, when I applied for citizenship, I used to live in Toronto, and so my closest IRCC office is in the middle of nowhere in Scarborough. If you don't know what Scarborough is, it's just a suburb of Toronto that's a bit inconvenient to get to if you're in downtown. But here's what the building looks like. And let's go. I took a streetcar, commuter train, and bus to get there. My ceremony was in the morning, and so I thought, what better way to start my new Canadian day than a breakfast at Tim Hortons? And here's what they say to bring with you. Your invitation, your PR card, 2 pieces of ID, one of which can be your PR card. I also brought my driver's license, a copy of your consent form, a holy book if you wish, a water bottle, and a cell phone or camera, which I used to make this video. Unfortunately, you do have to forfeit your PR card right before the ceremony to be destroyed. I was sad because I wanted to hang on to it as a keepsake. If you don't have your PR card, apparently you have to order a new one, which may set back your ceremony date. We arrived about half an hour early, and they began doing identity checks and taking people's PR cards, and then they basically filed us into this room where one side had the candidates or citizens to be, and the other side for the guests. Each seat had a welcome folder that had information for newcomers to Canada, along with a letter from the Prime Minister. There was also a little Canadian flag and a little maple leaf pin that you could wear during the ceremony. And then the ceremony began with opening remarks from the judge.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you today. 116 people from 42 different countries. Welcome to all of you on behalf of the Government of Canada. What a journey it's been to get to this day. And it's so good to see you. As an Indigenous Canadian, I'd like to acknowledge first that I'm presiding on this ceremony on the traditional territory of the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat.
Then it came time to say the oath and swear allegiance to Canada.
We'll be repeating the oath as a group, one sentence at a time, and each time only after the presiding official. And we will say the oath in both official languages, English and French. So now I will ask all candidates for citizenship to stand up. Mr. Presiding Official, the candidates for citizenship are ready to repeat the oath.
Thank you very much.
Now, if you didn't know, pledging allegiance to Canada involves pledging allegiance to the King of England, who is also the King of Canada. Now, the American in me thought, well, we fought a war in 1775 to make sure we never had to swear allegiance to the King again, but sometimes you gotta betray George Washington.
I swear that I will be faithful.
That I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance.
And bear true allegiance.
To His Majesty.
To His Majesty.
King Charles III.
King Charles III.
King of Canada.
King of Canada.
His heirs and successors.
His heirs and successors.
And that I will faithfully observe.
Faithfully observe
The laws of Canada.
the laws of Canada,
Including the Constitution.
including the Constitution,
Which recognizes and affirms.
which recognizes and affirms
The Aboriginal and treaty rights.
the Aboriginal treaty rights
Of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples.
of First Nations of Indigenous
And fulfill my duties.
And fulfill my duties
As a Canadian citizen.
as a Canadian citizen.
Excellent. Now, we're going to try this in French. Okay, everybody? Your best effort.
And then we had to repeat the same thing in French, and we collectively decimated the French language. My apologies to George Washington and Canada's francophone population.
Et porterai
Je porterai
sincère allégeance les lois du Canada,
les lois du Canada,
y compris la Constitution.
y compris la Constitution. After saying the oath, we were officially Canadian citizens, and we lined up and they called us out by name to receive our citizenship certificates, which felt pretty similar to a graduation ceremony. I guess where you graduate as a Canadian. And here I am, a full-on Canadian citizen. You receive this paper certificate the day of the ceremony, which is your proof of citizenship, but you have the option to turn it in and receive a digital certificate 5 days after the ceremony. I decided to keep my paper certificate as I wanted to get my passport quickly. And lastly, we all came together and sang the national anthem. And this is the moment when you get those goosebumps and can finally say that you are proud to be Canadian.
And now we will have a few words from our Prime Minister.
Then lastly, we got to hear closing remarks from JT himself.
Congratulations. Whether you came here for safety, to reconnect with family, just to start a new life, you are now an equal member of our country. And as Canadians, we share responsibilities to look out for one another, to welcome those who are new here, and to respect those who are...
Finally, after the ceremony, it was a photo opportunity. You could take pictures in the room or even with the judge. Now, next order of business after the ceremony was to get my passport, and I wanted to get it fast. That's because I am living in Colombia, where I am now, and I flew all the way to Toronto just for the ceremony. And so the process was you can't apply for the passport until you've actually been a Canadian citizen for 2 days. You have to wait 2 days after the ceremony to actually begin the passport application. And so I spent the next 2 days working on the application. And so the application is something that you have to print out. I also had to find a guarantor, and so you have to find someone. This is only if it's your first time applying for the passport. You have to find someone to basically vouch for your identity and also have that guarantor sign and date one of your passport photos. I also went to go take these passport photos, which I just did at a Shoppers Drug Mart and got them instantly. And then lastly, you need 2 references. And so these are people that you have to have known for more than 2 years who are Canadian citizens as well. And they basically vouch for your character, we'll say. So if you do want the expedited passport, you have to find a Service Canada center that's capable of processing it. Now, initially I was thinking of going somewhere very far away, like St. Catharines, to do my passport application. And this is because right after the pandemic, everyone rushed to get their passports, and this created basically a massive backlog.
It's stress. The wheels of government are known to move slowly.
We stayed here overnight, and it's been horrible.
But tell that to 1-year-old Avia and her pregnant mother, who've been waiting in a passport line outside for 30 hours and counting.
Now, I didn't realize, but nowadays that's not really a problem. There's a massive quantity of people trying to get passports, and so it is relatively easy to go and get one. And then a friend who told me, just go to the Service Canada Center in downtown Toronto. They should be able to see you just fine. And I looked it up, and they have some very good reviews. This is the passport office on 74 Victoria Street, and they have 4.3 stars. They're doing such a good job that people are coming and leaving positive reviews for a government service. That's unheard of. They must be doing something right. So I decided to go, and the process was super simple. The reviews are very well merited. I went an hour before opening just thinking there would be a massive lineup. There was, but they gave everyone a number for their place in line. Everybody got inside, and we were all seen relatively quickly. So it's kind of like the DMV, or if you've ever been to Service Canada before, basically you get a number, you sit down. When your number is called, you basically go up to the counter, or wicket as they call it in Canadian English. I presented all my documents, they made copies of the photos and everything, and then they told me come back in 2 days and your passport will be ready. Now, in order to expedite the passport, you must have travel plans. And so what I did was actually bought a ticket to go to Rochester, New York, which is where my parents live, so I thought I'd go visit them. And I took the train from Canada to the US, which is an interesting experience, and I will be posting a video about that as well. And so basically I printed out this ticket. The train ticket cost me something like $70. And I showed them that I was traveling, and they basically said, great, you'll get your passport in 2 days. And in 2 days I returned. There's no need to wait in line. You just go right inside, go upstairs, and they direct you to an office, and basically they hand you your new, beautiful Canadian passport. So yeah, the whole process was fairly simple. If you are physically present in Canada, if you are not in Canada, I do believe you have to do the application through the embassy or consulate, and it may take much more time. Now, the question that you may have is, okay, why are you living in Colombia, but you want to become a Canadian citizen? What happened there? And so my story is that after graduating from college, I moved to Canada because I received a job offer. And I came into Canada under the NAFTA professional visa. And so there's something like 60 professions where basically a company has a say. there's no person in Canada capable of fulfilling this role, and so we need to hire someone within the NAFTA zone, so that includes the US, Mexico, and Canada, to basically fill this role. And so I'm an industrial designer. I design consumer products. I have my own business now, but at that time, basically there's not a huge amount of industrial designers in Canada, and so a company hired me to work there. So I stayed there for a bit. I had this visa for a while, and I said, okay, I want to become a permanent resident. And so I worked with the company to help me get permanent residency. I did the Express option, which Express permanent residency is available if you are a working professional. And they do give, it's basically a point system. They give preferences based on a series of criteria, like age, your profession, your English working capabilities, even a medical exam. And so they then take all of this and assign a point system, and then they basically invite you to apply to the Express entry. And so basically from start to finish, it took me about 6 months to get my PR card. And with the PR card, I lived in Canada for another 3 years. And that's when I decided, oh, I think I'm gonna start traveling the world, just because Canada is quite expensive to live in. So what happened was I became eligible for citizenship, because in total I lived in Canada for 5 years, and within a 5-year period you have to be present in Canada 1,095 days. And this is something that you have to record very meticulously, because they count basically every single day you've been in Canada, so you have to know exactly when you left and when you came back. And being an American citizen that lived close to the border, I traveled back and forth between the countries extensively, and so mapping this whole thing out became a nightmare. And then every day that you had a visa that's not permanent residency counts as a half day. And so basically I had, I think, 1.5 years under my visa, and so those were basically, that was basically 3/4 of a year right there. And then every day with the permanent residency card counted as 1 day, so minus all those different travels to the US and international travels. And it came out that I had roughly 1,095 days. And so I decided to pull the trigger and get citizenship just because I was eligible. Becoming a citizen was never on my plan, but I figured because I did have so many finances locked away in Canada and that I would definitely want to return later on in life, it would be a great option should my PR card expire. Now, at the same time while this is all happening, I decided that I wanted to travel the world just because I was working remotely. I had the flexibility to do so, and Toronto is really expensive to live in. And so I did the math and found that it's actually cheaper to travel than consistently live in Toronto. So I applied for my citizenship and then basically took off for the next 2 years. About probably a year or so later, I basically got confirmation that I was moving forward in the process. I was assigned an immigration officer and basically did my interview with her. And during the interview, she told me, everything looks good. I submitted my travel information, but it appears that there's basically a handful of trips that were basically unaccounted for. And again, this is because you have to submit all the travel information that you have when you left Canada, when you came back. And basically the IRCC compares that to the border services information. And there was like 3 or so trips that weren't on there. And she said, okay, if these 3 trips were day trips to the US, which I went to the US for day trips many, many times, you will be still eligible for citizenship. That's great. If not, if you were gone for a longer period of time, we're talking like weeks, then you'll have to go before a judge and you may have to wait and apply again. And I said, oh, great, here we go. So I went into my phone, I found records, I take pictures of everything when I travel, and I found out that those few trips were in fact day trips. I just went to the US to buy something or for a dentist appointment or anything like that. And so I sent this information back. She said, that's great. We just need you to prove this is in fact truthful with a document from Customs and Border Patrol. And here's where my whole journey begins. And this is why my whole process was delayed by a lot. Because normally I think, if I'm not mistaken, the citizenship processing time now is between 12 and 15 months. Don't hold me to that, but it took me almost 2.5 years. And the reason being that I went to the Customs and Border Patrol website, and you need to get what's called an I-94 form. Now, the I-94 form tells you basically every time that you entered and exited the US. What they don't tell you is that that I-94 form is for foreign nationals only. US citizens cannot get that information. I don't know why. I have no idea why that is the case. And so I went back to the immigration officer, told her what happened, and she said, okay, I'll give you a 30-day extension to get this information. You just need to file a Freedom of Information Act request to get the info. And so I filed an FOIA request and waited about a year. and I never got any information. Finally, I got back an email from Customs and Border Patrol saying that in order to get this document, I have to make, and this is a year later, in order to get this document, I need to physically mail in a request with my signature to verify my identity, because I can't just give that type of information over the internet. And I thought, great, I'm done. Like, I'm absolutely not going to be able to get my citizenship now. But I went back, I told the officer this is what happened, and she said, okay, it's fine, you know what, I will take your word for it that these are in fact day trips, because this seems to really be holding back the process. I said thank you so much, and my citizenship ceremony was scheduled within the next month. Now, unfortunately, during that time, I also had a trip to Europe booked, so I told them, hey, I have prearranged travel, can I reschedule the ceremony? They said no problem, when are you coming back? I said May 4th, and they rescheduled me for May 5th. Now, this is where it gets hard, because I was in Europe, I was coming back to Colombia, I already bought my ticket, and then directly going to Canada. And so that was a harsh 48 hours of travel right there. But then I made it. 2.5 years later, I am a Canadian citizen. And so I probably have my Canadian flag up here in the background. But yeah, that's my story, and thanks for listening. And I would say it's definitely, I did not have a very common citizenship journey, but it is how I ended up getting in. And until I'll probably be making a video on how and why I moved to Colombia, so stay tuned for that one. So we'll see you next time.